I wasn't supposed to be home that Tuesday evening. My OR block ran all week. A complex spinal decompression that had been on the books for 6 weeks. The kind of case I'd spent 40 minutes reviewing the night before. But the patient's pre-op blood work came back at 4:15 p.m. with platelet numbers that grounded everything. My attending made the call, I signed off on the reschedule, and by 5:40 I was already in street clothes, badge clipped to my bag, walking toward the parking garage on Victoria Street. I texted my wife from the car. Heading home early. Case got bumped. Want me to grab dinner? No response. She was probably in a meeting. She worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm downtown. Client calls that ran late. Presentations that bled into the evening. I stopped at the grocery store on Queen Street, picked up salmon and a bottle of Niagara Red, and drove east through Leslieville traffic. I pulled into the driveway at 6:23 p.m. My best friend's truck was parked along the curb. I sat in the car for a moment. Looked at the truck. Looked at the lights on in the front room. Looked at the truck again. My best friend and I had known each other since first year at Western. 15 years of shared history, give or take. He'd been at our wedding. He had a key to our place because he'd watered our plants when we went to Portugal 2 years ago, and we'd never asked for it back. Neither of us thought we needed to. That's the kind of friendship I thought we had. I turned off the engine, grabbed my bag and the groceries, walked to the front door. The house was quiet when I unlocked it. His boots in the entryway, her heels. I set my keys on the side table, carried the bag to the kitchen, put the salmon in the refrigerator. The wine went on the island. I could hear something upstairs. I stood at the bottom of the staircase and listened for a moment. It wasn't the television. I climbed slowly, not rushing, hand on the banister, even though I didn't need it. There's a thing that happens in surgery just before the first incision. Everything narrows, quiets, becomes very precise. That's what happened on those stairs. My pulse didn't spike. My hands were steady. My body had already understood what my mind was still finishing the sentence on. Our bedroom door was open. I pushed it the rest of the way. My wife saw me first. Her face went the color of a fresh sheet of gauze. My best friend turned a half-second later. For a moment all three of us were completely motionless. The kind of stillness that has weight to it, that you feel in the sternum. Oh God. My wife grabbed for the duvet. I didn't say anything. I stood in the doorway and looked at the two of them. The bed we'd bought together at a warehouse in Mississauga. The room we'd repainted in a color she chose, and I said looked gray, but she said was actually morning fog. The house we'd purchased jointly, for $840,000. When the market dipped and we thought we'd gotten lucky. My best friend sat up. Man, listen. Get dressed. My voice came out completely level. No anger in it, which surprised even me. Both of you, you have 15 minutes. Please. My wife was already crying, which I noted the way you note a vital sign. Information, not instruction. I can explain, 15 minutes. I walked back downstairs. Put the kettle on, which in retrospect was a strange thing to do, but it gave my hands something to occupy. I went to the living room, sat down on the couch, opened the timer on my phone. 14 minutes, 48 seconds. I could hear them above me. Her voice, low and urgent. His voice lower still, drawers. The bathroom tap running and stopping. Her crying intermittently. I sat on the couch and watched the number drop and felt something enormous and cold settling into my chest. Not moving, just sitting there. Like a stone placed at the bottom of a lake. At 11 minutes they came downstairs. My wife stopped in the doorway to the living room. Mascara tracked down both cheeks. She was holding her coat against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her together. Please don't do this. Just let me explain. I looked at the timer. 9 minutes. I love you. Her voice cracked on the second word. This was a mistake, it won't. It didn't mean anything, I promise you. A mistake is ordering the wrong thing at a restaurant. I stood up from the couch and walked to the front door, unhooking it and pulling it wide. A mistake is missing a highway exit. What you did required choices. Multiple repeated choices. Over however long this has actually been happening. My best friend was standing behind her. He looked terrible, face gray, eyes red. The expression of a man who had arrived at a reckoning he wasn't prepared for. I'm sorry, he said. I know that's not enough. I know you're my brother. I looked at him for 3 full seconds. Then I looked at the open door. He exhaled through his nose, walked past me, stepped out. My wife stood in the living room another minute, crying, asking me to wait, asking me not to do this, asking me if I understood what I was throwing away. I stood at the open door and didn't move. Eventually she walked out, fumbling her keys on the porch, turning back once with an expression I recognized. The one that had, always, somehow, made me feel like the difficult one, like the person being unreasonable. I closed the door, and locked it. Went upstairs, stripped the bed down to the mattress, Bagged everything, left it outside by the bins on the side of the house. Came back in, stood in the empty room for a minute. Then went back downstairs, sat back down on the couch, and didn't move for a long time. Around 10 o'clock I booked a locksmith for 8 a.m. Around 11, I called my family lawyer and left a voicemail. She called back before 8 the next morning, and we talked through the basics. The house purchased jointly, subject to equalization under the Family Law Act. She told me to document everything, and not to change our joint accounts unilaterally yet. I hung up and sent my wife a single text. Do not return to the house without advance notice. I've retained counsel. Then I blocked her number. My best friend called 12 times that day. I watched the calls come in and go to voicemail one after another, and felt nothing particular about it. By evening he'd switched to texts. Please. I know you probably won't read this, but I'm reading it, so I know he is. Long messages full of apologies that loop back on themselves. I read every one. I didn't respond to any of them. The group chat, the one we'd all been in for years, 6 of us from university, started lighting up around mid-afternoon. I opened it standing in my kitchen with a mug of coffee and read what was there. My wife had made calls. That much was immediately clear. Not one person had reached out to me first. They'd heard her version, assembled their understanding, and now the chat was full of careful concern pointed in a single direction. Has anyone actually spoken to Cecily? She sounded really shaken up last night. I tried calling him. No answer. Should we be worried? She told me a little of what happened. I don't want to say too much, but I think they both need support right now. I silenced the chat and set my phone face down on the counter. Over the next 4 days I received 2 calls from one of my oldest friends, a voicemail from someone I'd helped move into his first apartment in 2019, and a long text from a woman I'd known since second year. Someone I'd considered genuinely close, the kind of friend who knew which parts of my childhood had been difficult, and who I trusted with information I didn't give to most people. Her text said, I love you and I'm not taking sides, but I need you to know that Cecily is not okay. What happened was wrong. Nobody is saying it wasn't, but you've been working 60 and 70-hour weeks for the past 2 years. She was lonely. I'm not making excuses. I just think before you do anything you can't undo, you should hear her out. You've been together 6 years. That matters. I read it twice. Then I put the phone down and went back to work. They all used the same word, mistake. It was remarkable, the way people converge on vocabulary, when they need something to be smaller than it is. I was grateful for the hospital that week. Emergencies don't negotiate. You show up and you do the work, and the work demands all of you, which left very little room for anything else. I moved through my shifts the way I always do, present, methodical, focused on what was in front of me. The operating theater is the one place in my life that has always made complete, unchanging sense. But outside of work, the pressure kept building. My best friend switched to emails when I stopped receiving his texts. One of the friends from the chat stopped by my house. I saw the car from the upstairs window and didn't go down. A card appeared in my mailbox, handwritten, from someone I hadn't expected. It said, "We're here. We're not judging. We just want you to know you don't have to go through this alone." It was signed with 3 names. 3 names. Not one of whom had called me in the first 48 hours. Then the dinner was proposed. One of the friends texted me a separate message, outside the group chat. "We want to see you. We're not picking sides. We're your people too and we miss you. Please come, no agenda. Just dinner at our usual spot, College Street, Saturday at 7. I read it on a Tuesday. I sat with it for 3 days. Then I texted back, "I'll be there." It was -14 the Saturday evening. I took the streetcar to College Street. Wind chill dropping it further. February in Toronto. The kind of cold that gets into your collar, no matter how high you pull it. They were already there when I arrived. 4 of them at the table we'd used for birthdays, promotions. The night one of them had gotten engaged, and we'd ordered every dessert on the menu. My oldest friend from second year. The guy I'd helped move, twice. The couple who'd introduced me to my wife, at a house party in the annex, back in 2018. And my wife. She was sitting at the far end, nearest the window. She'd dressed carefully, hair done, lipstick on, the version of herself she put forward when she needed to appear composed. Her eyes were slightly red at the rims. She'd timed it well. I sat down, picked up the menu. "I'm really glad you came." The friend across from me leaned forward a little. The posture of someone who thinks they're managing a situation. "We thought it would help. Being together." I looked at the specials. Cecily wanted a chance to say something. This from the couple's wife. "If that's okay with you." I read the menu. "I want you to know," my wife began, her voice finding the tone she'd clearly practiced, "that what happened was not about you. It was my failure. I own that. But I need you to understand that I was drowning, and I made a terrible. Sorry." I flagged down the server. Can I get the duck? And a sparkling water, thank you. Silence settled over the table like a dropped cloth. My wife's voice came back quieter. I'm trying to apologize. I set down the menu, looked at her directly for the first time since she'd walked out of our house. I know, I said. And then I turned to my oldest friend and asked about the renovation she'd mentioned in passing months ago. She stared at me for a moment, then answered. I asked follow-up questions. I asked the couple about their drive-in from Etobicoke. Asked the guy I'd helped move about his new position at the firm. I made conversation with everyone at the table, except my wife. She stopped trying to speak after about 20 minutes. She sat at the end of the table and watched me interact with people who had known us both for years. And I watched her understand, very slowly, that I had not come here to reconcile. I had not come to give her a public moment of grace or to let the people who'd rallied around her feel like they'd accomplished something. Something. The duck arrived, I ate it, it was good. At some point the friend across from me said carefully, I think what Cecily needs to feel is that there's a way back. That it's possible. I put down my fork, a way back to what? To whatever you can rebuild. To at least being civil. I looked around the table. At every face. The couple who'd come to our wedding. The friend who'd held my wife's hair back, after too much wine at someone's birthday years ago. And who I'd always thought of as someone who understood what it meant to be loyal. All of them assembled here, because my wife had called them. Told them what she needed them to believe, and asked them to help her manage me. I came tonight, I said, because I needed to confirm something. Nobody spoke. None of you called me in the first 48 hours. You heard one version of what happened from one person, and then organized around her. I'm not saying that makes you bad people. I'm saying I noticed it, and I think you all know it's true, and I don't want to sit here and pretend otherwise. That's not fair, my oldest friend said. Maybe. I folded my napkin and set it down, but it's accurate. I stood up. My wife was on her feet immediately, like she'd been coiled for it. Please don't do this. Not like this. Not in front of everyone. I'm not doing anything in front of anyone. I buttoned my coat. I'm leaving dinner. You're being cruel, she said. Quietly. The word chosen with precision. You're being exactly what you've always been. The couple's wife said. And I could hear the shift in her tone. The sympathy for me had been conditional. Had lasted only as long as I was willing to behave the way they'd planned for. Closed off. Unavailable. And now you're making her suffer for something that she chose. I looked at her steadily. That she chose repeatedly. Over however many months this actually was. I looked at all of them. I hope the rest of your evening is good. I walked to the door. My oldest friend followed me. If you walk out right now, she said, you're going to regret it. We are your people. I stopped with my hand on the door. Looked at her. 15 years. Second year Western. The person I'd called when my father was in the hospital. You were, I said. I walked out into the cold. My phone was going before I reached the streetcar stop. That was unnecessary. And hurtful to everyone at that table. We were trying to help you. And you turned it into a performance. Please just call me, please. I read them standing at the stop, breath fogging, cars moving through the salt gray slush on College. Then I blocked every number, one after another, standing there in the February cold until I'd gone through all of them. Methodical. No drama. The way you close files at the end of a long shift. When I got home I removed myself from the group chat. Went through Instagram, Facebook, a few others. Quietly blocked everyone connected to that dinner. Then I opened a temporary group chat with all of them and typed, I won't be reachable after tonight. Please do not contact me through mutual acquaintances, through my workplace, or through any other channel. I wish you all well. Sent it. Deleted the group. Changed my number the next morning. My best friend showed up at the hospital 3 weeks later. He didn't come to my floor. He wasn't reckless enough for that. He waited in the main lobby and asked at the volunteer's desk if they could let me know he was there. Security called my extension. Please ask him to leave, I said. If he doesn't, call building security. He left a handwritten note with the desk attendant. An envelope with my name on it in his handwriting. Which I recognized after 15 years the way you recognize a voice in another room. I carried it to the elevator. Dropped it in the recycling bin outside the staff room without opening it. Went back to my patients. My wife's lawyer sent a formal request for a meeting to discuss the house outside the legal process. My lawyer handled it. The equalization took 8 months to settle. The house sold in October. I walked away with enough for a substantial down payment on a condo in the annex. Smaller, quieter, no shared history in the walls. My own space, my own silence. That. Sometime around the following spring I heard, through someone on the periphery of our social circle, who had no particular stake in any of it, that my wife had moved to Calgary. That my best friend and she had tried to make something of what had happened between them, and it had collapsed within a few months as that the friend group had fractured. Arguments over how the dinner had been handled, over who had said what, over whether they'd done right by anyone. That the couple had apparently been distant with each other for much of the winter. I listened to all of this at a table in the hospital lounge, over coffee, and said very little. I hadn't gone looking for any of it. It had simply arrived, the way information does when you've existed somewhere long enough. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing it. I want to be precise about that. I didn't feel vindicated or proven right. I felt something more like recognition. The quiet acknowledgement that what I had understood turned out to have been correct. That my best friend had not acted from love, or from some powerful, uncontrollable feeling. He had acted from something smaller, and more reckless than that. And the weight of it was his to carry forward in ways that had nothing to do with me. In November, I flew to Vancouver for a surgical conference. 2 days at the convention center on the waterfront, panels and workshops, and the particular exhaustion of being intensely engaged for 10 hours straight. On the last evening, a loose group of attendees ended up at a bar on Granville Street. I almost didn't go, early flight, long week. I went anyway. There was a surgeon from a hospital in Halifax who'd given one of the afternoon's better presentations. Outcomes data, community hospitals, methodologically careful. Zero performance in the delivery. When I told her the methodology was the strongest part, she immediately told me 2 things. She'd have done differently if she ran the study again. No deflection. No practiced humility. Just, here is what I know and here is the edge of it. We talked for almost 3 hours. Before I left, she gave me her card. Just a card, name, department, email address. I put it in my jacket pocket and didn't overthink it. On the flight home over the Rockies, watching the prairies spread out dark and enormous below me at 35,000 feet, I thought about what it felt like to want to know someone. Not in the clawing, desperate way of someone who's damaged and reaching. In the ordinary, considered, genuinely curious way of a person who has enough sleep and enough distance and enough cleared space to actually pay attention. It felt new. Or maybe just unfamiliar in a way that was different from new. There are people who would say I was cold through all of it. Too controlled. That I never gave anyone a real chance to explain themselves. That I closed every door before anyone could come through it. I've heard that characterization. I don't argue with it. What I know is this. When I climbed those stairs on a Tuesday evening in February and pushed open my bedroom door, I understood something immediately. Not just about what had happened, but about what it revealed. My wife had not stumbled into a moment of weakness. My best friend had not made a single, uncharacteristic error. The people who organized a dinner to manage my response had not failed to call me first, because they were busy or distracted. All of it, the betrayal, the framing, the careful management of the story, required consistent, deliberate choices made over time, by people who understood exactly what they were doing. You can be furious at someone who betrays you. You can be devastated by it, undone by it, desperate for it to mean something different than it means. What you cannot do, without cost to yourself, is keep acting as though the person asking for your forgiveness is different from the person who made those choices. I chose to believe what I had actually seen, to act on what I actually knew. Not on what would have been more convenient. Not on the version that required me to absorb everyone else's discomfort. To keep something intact that had already broken. I took the salmon out of the grocery bag that evening and put it in the refrigerator because it seemed wasteful not to. I drank the Niagara Red the morning after the locksmith left. I did my job, paid my bills, settled my obligations, and built something new in the space that opened up once. I stopped trying to hold together things that had never, as it turned out, been mine to hold. There is a resident on my team right now, who reminds me of who I was at that stage. Earnest, slightly overwhelmed, not yet certain what kind of doctor he is going to become. He asked me last week how I make the hard calls. The ones with incomplete information and no guarantee. I told him, you gather what you can actually observe, you act on that, and you stop carrying the weight of what other people need the answer to be. He nodded carefully. The way you nod when you're trying to store something. I hope it helps him. Some of what I know now I only understand because I had to live it first. I walked out of the hospital that evening into a clear November night, collar up against the cold off Lake Ontario, and caught the streetcar home through the lit-up city. My condo was quiet when I unlocked the door, my own walls, my own things, my own silence. Chosen, not imposed. I cooked dinner, opened a bottle of wine, sat by the window and watched the street below. And it was enough. It was more than enough.